a brief period of time, the public was led to believe that Sushant was depressed and killed himself. What if I told you that this was not the case? What if I told you that Sushant was murdered? Rhea, in comparison to the women of his past, was definitely his what the relationship. I don't think this is a nice girl that we're dealing with. I don't think Rhea is a very good person. I'm really hoping that this will have something of a Dark Knight effect for Sushant and that he will sweep all the major awards. I've even had a couple people telling me, if you keep making these videos, you're going to end up just like Sushant. I'm not saying that cases can't have an initial presumption of being a murder and then it turns out it was a suicide. I'm saying that it's very odd considering that Dr. Gupta said that this was 200% a murder. And here we are. Welcome to PCP, Pop Culture Psychology, True Crime Edition. I am Ilana, aka Elmar Superstar. Let's dive right in. Hey everyone, it's Editing Mode Ilana here. No, I don't wear glasses on the regular, but sometimes I do for fun, just to shake things up a bit. Anyways, I filmed this on September 30th, 2021, and within the past couple weeks, there have been quite a few updates within Sushant's case, such as Siddharth Patani being denied bail once again, and now applying for bail once again, which I really hope he does not get bail at all. Rhea's bank accounts have been unfrozen, and her devices have been returned to her, and the Central Bureau of Investigation has reached out to the United States for help to solve Sushant's case. But the biggest update is that 2 days ago, 5 of Sushant's distant relatives were killed in a hit-and-run accident in Bihar, and that's incredibly suspicious considering that this is not the first time that somebody from Sushant's family was targeted. In January of this year, his cousin was also shot in a drive-by shooting. That further convinces me that something very nefarious and sinister is going on with this case. I also wanted to include the Instagram posts from Mahesh Bhatt and Rhea on the day that Sushant died. They just struck me as very weird, and I had to include them. With that being said, back to the show. Today is going to be the epilogue for my series on the mysterious death of Bollywood actor Sushant Singh Rajput, and for the foreseeable future, it will be the final video. Of course, if anything happens down the road, such as a major break or if the case is even solved, I will do a follow-up part 5, but for now, I have decided to wrap up the series. It's very bittersweet to conclude on this note because this is an ending without an ending. After almost a year and a half and 6 videos, I still cannot definitively say whether or not I think Sushant committed suicide or he was murdered. There is a lot to back up both angles, but I advise you, as my audience, to watch the series and form your own perspective. I also ask you not to send any hate to anybody mentioned in this video. I'm still trying to learn the ropes of true crime videos, so I'll be going about things in a bit of a different manner. I just wanted to run with my vision, and I also apologize if at times I may get a bit heated throughout the video. I would like to issue a trigger warning of all the words that YouTube really hates to hear on their platform, and I will be making several comparisons and references for my American audience to better relate to the topic. It's gonna be a bit of a long one, so grab some snackies and let's get started. In order to get to the end, we must first go back to the beginning, which is leading up to the day that Sushant died. On June 8th, Sushant and his girlfriend Rhea Chakraborty got into a major fight and he asked her to leave. Sushant's sister, Mitu, came to stay with him because she was concerned for his mental well-being. Unfortunately, on June 12th, Mitu left in order to return home to her children, not knowing that this would be the last time she saw her younger brother alive. This next part is the sequence of events reiterated by Sushant's housekeeper, Niraj, of what happened on June 14th. It started out ordinary enough, with Niraj waking up at 6:30 in the morning to walk Sushant's dog Fudge, and by 8 a.m. was starting his cleaning duties. Sushant walked out of his room and asked for chilled water, not interacting much before going back into his room and locking the door, which is something that his staff said that he never did. At around 9:30, his cook knocked on the door with a tray of bananas, coconut water, and juice, but he only took the coconut water and juice, and again, locked the door to his room. At around 10:30, the cook came back to ask him what he wanted on the menu for the rest of the day, but he didn't answer, and so the staff thought he was sleeping. After a while, the house staff became concerned and went downstairs to tell Sushant's roommates Dipesh Sawant and Siddharth Patani that he was not answering the door. The two of them went upstairs and knocked on Sushant's door for a very long time but received no answer. As Dipesh went back downstairs so he and the house staff could look for the extra keys for Sushant's room, Siddharth called Sushant's phone and received no answer, and the door remained locked. At this point, Me Too was called, and she told them to get the door open under any circumstances and that she would be there shortly. A keymaker was called, but he took too long, so he was sent away, leaving Siddharth to knock down the door, and this is where he found Sushant dead. The story has changed countless times on exactly how Sushant was found, whether or not he was hanging or already taken down, but he was dead, and this was believed to have been a suicide. This initial presumption did bring mental health and men's mental health into the topic of conversation, but the suicide angle has always been ruled out. Even PewDiePie, one of the biggest creators on the YouTube platform, did not think that Sushant killed himself.
Just such a tragedy. It really makes you sad to think that he passed away at such a young age. And I think I mentioned before in a video, because the police say he died from suicide, and at least personally, someone that lives in the moment, I cannot make sense out of committing suicide. And there's been this whole controversy and theories about, did he really, what happened, people don't know, and I don't really want to get into that. I wanted this to just be a video tributing him because I think he's a cool dude and I wanted to share with my audience. But yeah, it's just this statement he had about living in the moment. Obviously this is a couple years ago, but you wouldn't commit suicide if you had this mindset. I don't believe that at all. I really don't. But then again, yeah, it is a couple years ago, and I don't want to add things to that, but that's just how I felt while listening to it.
One of the main reasons this theory is brushed off is due to the fact that there wasn't a suicide note. Statistically, an absence of a suicide note isn't too uncommon. A notable example would be Lee Thompson-Young, famous for playing the titular character in Disney's The Famous Jet Jackson franchise. In his later years, Young was suffering from depression and had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which led him to take his own life. It's also worrisome that Sushant's last Google searches before he died consisted of bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and painless death, in addition to medical papers and antidepressants being found in his house. The legitimacy on the state of Sushant's mental health is murky, to say the least. There were several people that came forward saying that he wasn't depressed and not the kind of person to commit suicide. However, there were people within Bollywood that expressed that they were aware of Sushant's treatment in the industry. Depression knows no bounds. Everyone is susceptible, but it is unanimous that Sushant's final days were filled with intense worry in an almost manic-like state. Apparently, Sushant's family had been aware to a degree of his mental health struggles despite originally claiming denial. I can't imagine how devastating and overwhelming this must be on all of them, living in the agony of the unknown of exactly what happened and if they'll ever get an answer. I can feel the pain in the posts of Sushant's sisters. He was like their baby, but I think the one that I feel the most for is his father. Following a cardiac episode and heart surgery at the end of 2020, Krishna Kumar Singh returned to his Patna home in February 2021. Every day, in the morning twilight before sunrise, he takes an hour-long e-rickshaw ride throughout the city, providing much-needed silence. After the losses of his wife and now 2 sons, I really do hope that one day he is able to achieve peace of mind. What occurred next really thrust the Singh family under the microscope when, on September 7th, 2020, Rhea filed an FIR against Sushant's older sisters Priyanka and Mittu for forgery and unofficial prescriptions. While Mittu is cleared in the FIR, Priyanka has not been and is still being investigated at the time of recording this video. The first information report claims that Priyanka sent Sushant falsified prescriptions of Librium, Nexito, and Lonazep, which are prescribed by a doctor for depression and anxiety. While all of these are banned under the Narcotics and Psychotropic Substance Act, her lawyer claimed in court that this doctor was qualified to prescribe the medications and even conduct telemed visits. A week before the 1-year mark of Sushant's passing, Rhea's confession to the NCB surfaced on the internet. In her written statement, Rhea mentioned that he was on clonazepam, which made her and her younger brother show it concerned over side effects and the fact that a cardiologist that had never consulted or met Sushant was prescribing a medication that can't be given without a psychiatrist consultation. I want to break down some of the facts surrounding these medications, as it is important to know how it could have potentially affected Sushant and his mental health. Librium is the brand name for the drug chlorodiazepoxide, a sedative that is used for anxiety in addition to treating alcohol withdrawal symptoms. Side effects include mood swings and unwanted thoughts of suicide. Nexito is the generic name for Lexapro, an antidepressant of the drug class selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, more commonly known as SSRIs. Lexapro is used to treat the disorders of major depressive, generalized anxiety, and obsessive compulsive. Side effects effects include racing thoughts, risky behavior, and extreme feelings of happiness and sadness. Lonazep and Klonopin both contain clonazepam and belong to a group of medications called benzodiazepines, more commonly referred to as benzos. They are primarily used for the treatment of epilepsy and anxiety disorders. Side effects include depression, nervousness, memory impairment, anxiety, and mental confusion. Stopping clonazepam suddenly can worsen your condition and cause withdrawal symptoms and may last for several weeks to more than 12 months. It was stated by more than one of his psychiatrists that Sushant had stopped taking his medication before he died, but the time frame of exactly when has never been specified. With all of this coming into play, it definitely supports a suicide theory, but there's just way too many glaring inconsistencies and guilty parties. There was never a diagnosis of any mental health problems in his autopsy, and since Sushant was cremated, we'll truly never know. I do believe that, like all of us, Sushant may have had a couple demons of his own. KK Singh's lawsuit against the makers of one of the films inspired by Sushant's life was thrown out, but it makes me wonder, how will such a sensitive topic be handled? Will it be an instance of art imitating life, or will it be given the Bollywood treatment? At the start, the Bollywood angle was by far one of the biggest theories, that people in the industry didn't really like Sushant, that he was overshadowed by products of nepotism, and that his death could have been an inside job by one of the big movie moguls. This wasn't something that I particularly wanted to touch on, but I have to say that after over a year of observing various footage, I can see where this is a valid point. With everything in life, there will be fans and critics, but compared to his competition, Sushant was not viewed as favorably, which is evident on multiple occasions on the show Coffee with Karan.
Who would you kill, marry, or hook up with? Ranbir Kapoor, Ranveer Singh, Sushant Singh Rajput.
Marry Ranbir, kill Sushant, hook up with Ranbir.
Okay then.
Sorry, Sushant.
Okay. Hot or not? Just those two words. Virat Kohli.
Hot.
Arman Kohli.
Not.
Ranbir Kapoor.
Very hot.
Imran Khan.
Extremely hot.
Sushant Singh Rajput.
Huh? Hot, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen any of his films.
Arjun Kapoor.
Hot.
Sushant Singh Rajput.
Not.
Okay, and lastly, rank the following new boys in order of sex appeal.
Okay, not of sex appeal.
Sex appeal. Arjun, Varun, Siddharth, Aditya, Sushant.
Arjun Kapoor, first. Siddharth, second. Aditya Roy Kapoor,
Third.
third. Then Varun and then Sushant. Sid, Varun, Aditya, Arjun, Ranveer and Sushant.
Sid, Aditya, Ranveer, Arjun, Varun, Sushant. Sid, Varun, Arjun, Aditya, Ranveer, Sushant.
Choices, very quickly. Arjun, Siddharth, Varun, Sushant, Aditya, Ranveer. Who, according to you, has the brightest future? Aditya,
This is going to be a very biased thing. Arjun and Varun. And Aditya.
Roy Kapoor.
Yeah, because I've known these three guys really closely. I worked with Aditya and Varuna Singh and Arjuna Singh since they were like, and Arjun has been trained by me for the longest time.
I'll take Ranveer, and Varun.
Arjun and Varun.
Your biggest competitor, Siddharth, Ayushman, Sushant, Arjun, Ranveer or Aditya?
I think Ranveer, because he's as crazy as I am.
This wasn't something that escaped Sushant at all, and it was pretty evident in this post he made from October 9th, 2016. It was well known that Sushant had not had the easiest journey in Bollywood, especially being an outsider.
Mr. Kaipoche, Sushant Singh Rajput, sir. Sushant! ऊपर आजा, आजा, आजा. ये पूरा एड्रेस है.
नाम है सर.
नाम है क्या ये सुश प्रोनाउंस नहीं किया जाता मुझसे तो. सर सुशी कह दीजिए, शॉर्ट फॉर्म है. एक्चुअली यहाँ सुश भी है, शांत भी है. ये क्या बातचीत करेगा? वैसे सर
पतंग भी उड़ाता है और एक्टिंग के
मुझको तो जानो है रेटिंग सुश तो चलो 1 2 3 4 रोते हुए को मना लेंगे कट हा हा थोड़ा टेंपो हाई करो ना डांस कर चलेंगे दिलों का मजा हा हा मजा का मजा
गुरु को डांस होता है.
डांस सिखाओ. Go take him away, and 2 years, don't let him come back to Bollywood.
He had been sabotaged by studio contracts and lost out on career-defining roles to bigger names, but he had accomplished some things that I think any actor or performer would love to achieve. First, he managed to avoid being typecast, and typecast can be perceived as a good thing because it means an actor is getting cast, but there is a stigma attached to it. Like any Bollywood hero, he did appear in films that had an emphasis on romance, but their overall concept was different, And Sushant had a really great knack for picking multi-dimensional characters. He also had a successful transition from television to film and had amassed a popular following in both mediums. So clearly, even if he wasn't the bigger name, Sushant actually was further established than most of his competition. The entertainment industry, no matter what part of the world, is corrupted. The good isn't taken hand in hand with the bad, it's flawed with major politics, and it's being run in a systematically wrong manner. Right now, the question on if the environment will ever change for the good can't be answered. It was because of all these telltale signs and Sushant's overall treatment that people didn't think he was going to win the Filmfare Award for Best Actor in 2021. There was even a hashtag no awards to Sushant, which to me seems completely nonsensical and almost like a contradiction. If you support him, why wouldn't you want him to win the awards? Needless to say, when he didn't win the Filmfare Award for Best Actor, the only one that was surprised by it was me. This year's Filmfare nominees for Best Actor are pretty close to the two Oscar races I mentioned in my Sound of Metal video, the 2013 and 2015 Academy Awards, in which every actor was exceptional and deserved to win. There's two veterans that are seasoned professionals, two contemporaries that become more nuanced with every performance. Then rounding out the category are the posthumous entries of Irfan Khan and Sushant, with Irfan ultimately winning. Irfan was an incredible actor, but it didn't make any sense for him to win the Lifetime Achievement Award and Best Actor, as the former would definitely supersede the latter, and his final film was kind of forgettable. This was a surprise win despite Irfan's immense respect and popularity, similar to how with the most recent Oscars, Anthony Hopkins won Best Actor over the predicted posthumous win of Chadwick Boseman. Sushant didn't care about things like award shows or box office numbers, he just wanted to perform. He even took a pay-for-play fee in his third movie role just so he could work alongside Academy Award nominated Amir Khan, and he was begging his fans to watch his films. Sushant absolutely deserved the win for Dil Bachara, as this was truly a beautiful swan song that any actor would have been lucky to play. As far as the argument of nepotism, I continue to stand by what I said in the first video, that it's unavoidable from the film industry to a local mom and pop shop. It's just the way of the world, but it is not a guarantee for success. It's only a stepping stone. I don't personally believe in boycott Bollywood. I think that the animosity intensified due to the hashtag and gave people more of a reason to loathe the bigwigs that run this industry, such as Karan Johar and the Bhatt brothers, both of which have been considered the people of interest in the court of public opinion. I mentioned earlier that Coffee with Karan was the place where Sushant received the most criticism, but the questions that had been asked of the guests were very generalized up until this part of Karan's interview with Kriti Sanon.
Sushant Singh Rajput.
Curious?
Now rank them in order of talent. Karthik, Varun, Ayushmann, Sushant, Tiger.
Sushant, Varun, Karthik, Ayushmann, Tiger.
Sushant or Karthik, the actor you look best with?
I think I look good with both. Rapta was appreciated only for chemistry, so I would say that.
Really? Where was the chemistry?
Okay, Karthik.
Yeah.
You're confusing me.
Okay, Karthik.
I thought that this was really catty on his end. He was obviously trying to bait her. Even though Rabata was not a huge success, it was agreed that one of the best parts of it was the chemistry between Sushant and Kriti. I mentioned in part 2 of this series that Coffee with Karan is like the Bollywood Watch What Happens Live, which would make Karan Johar the Bollywood Andy Cohen. And therefore, I do think that some of his actions are to maintain that talk show host persona. The Bhatt brothers, on the other hand, they're a different story. Mahesh Bhatt gives total Weinstein vibes. The pictures of him kissing his daughter on the mouth and the pictures and chats between him and Rhea definitely speak for themselves. And the fact that Mahesh Bhatt compared Sushant to Praveen Bobby, a Bollywood star with schizophrenia that later committed suicide, is pretty telling. Watch or don't watch whatever you want, but Bollywood is the biggest film industry in the entire world, even bigger than Hollywood, so it's definitely not going anywhere. With that being said, this definitely took effect for the release of Chihire, which co-stars Sushant's final girlfriend, Rhea Chakraborty. I'm gonna be honest, next to the investigation, this is the part of the story that I hate discussing the most, and yet there's so much to say about who could arguably be considered one of the most compelling players of the game. Another reason why I delayed this video was because I wanted to include posts that people had made for Sushant's 1-year mark of his passing, specifically the women of his love life, Ankita Lakhande, Kriti Sanon, Sara Ali Khan, and Rhea Chakraborty. Out of the 4 of them, Ankita definitely posted the most, posting 3 different videos of her and Sushant thanking him for being part of her journey and their journey, and that one day they would meet again. Ankita has been getting trolled pretty badly throughout all all this, especially since her show with Sushant, Pravrita Rishta, is being rebooted, and I really commend her for handling this with such grace and composure. The first time I ever shot with you, our look test. Two complete strangers meant to cross each other's path for a film that spoke of inexplainable connection based in two worlds. Today, it feels so painfully weird to know that you and I are not in the same world anymore. Still feels like it hasn't happened for real. Like maybe you are still around and I'll bump into you somewhere. I don't think it'll ever sink in, but I pray that you are happy and at peace whichever world you're in. One of the things I reflect on the most in regards to this case is this picture of Kriti arriving to Sushant's funeral. I just feel this immense sense of heartbreak every time I look at it, and I think that it's very evident in the way that she writes that she cared such a great deal for him. She held him to such a high standard. Whenever I needed your help, advice, or a laugh, you were always there. You introduced me to the world of acting, made me believe that dreams could come true, and gave me all that I have today. So can't believe you're gone, but every time I look at the stars, the rising sun, or the moon, I know you're here. From Kitternoth to Andromeda. Even though Sarah never officially confirmed that she was dating Sushant until she was questioned by the NCV, neither one of them had a very good poker face, as is seen with these interviews.
Ranveer Singh or Sushant Singh Rajput, the two heroes you're working with, who do you prefer?
Nice question. So tell the truth. Always tell the truth.
Ranveer Singh.
Who do you prefer?
Ranveer Singh. You got more money.
Stop it with the money. Kal na yaar.
अरे कैसे मैंने गलत बोला? Copy. Is that your impression? Sam, are you watching the vow? What is the vow?
I don't really
It's
want
not
to do
us,
this.
Sam's interpretation of his voice.
Sam, कहाँ था? बेटी ने कहाँ बता दिया vow को यार? You really want to get married to Ranbir Kapoor?
No.
तुम्हारा इसका क्या चल
I
रहा है?
said that, यार.
कब हुआ ये?
ये पता है?
मुझे तो पता है. मुझे तो ब्रीफ किया करो यार.
नहीं मैं बता रही हूँ. मैं बहुत साल पहले मैंने ऐसे कहा था.
बहुत साल पहले कितने साल की हो तुम अभी तो?
बहुत 3-4 साल पहले कहा था. हाँ. I don't want to marry him.
And Kartik, are you want to date? Why यार? अभी हम लोग हैं यहाँ पे क्या है यार?
लोग हैं मतलब आपसे तो अभी मिली हूँ.
अच्छा. So you want to date Kartik?
मिलते रहना दोस्त.
I previously stated that Sarah is more or less considered a princess as she is a descendant of the Patootie royal dynasty. I'm sure that whomever she marries is most likely expected to be somebody respectable and of a higher class status, and perhaps this is what caused her relationship with Sushant to end. There isn't a moment where I believe that you aren't here anymore. They said that time heals everything, but you were my time and my everything. I know that you are my guardian angel now, watching me with your telescope from the moon and protecting me. I wait for you every day to come pick me up. I look for you everywhere. I know you're here with me. It breaks me every day. Then I think of you saying, "You've got this, Babu," and I carry on to the next day. A barrage of emotions cross my body every time I think of you not being here. My heart aches to write this. My heart aches to feel anymore. There is no life without you. You took the meaning of it with you. This void cannot be filled. Without you, I'm standing still. My sweet sunshine boy, I promise to give you Malpua every day and read all the quantum physics books in this world. Please come back to me. I miss you, my best friend, my man, my love, Babu and Put Put forever. I want to believe that at some point Rhea and Sushant were in love, but her behavior throughout all of this has made that dubious. If anything, Rhea is the poster child for Munchausen by proxy. Rhea seriously lucked out. Sushant was quite the catch, and their story is like something out of a Nicholas Sparks novel. Average actress captures the heart of a young, successful, handsome Bollywood actor. They travel the world, move in together. They're planning on getting married. Rumi Jaffrey, who directed Rhea in her latest film, said that Sushant and Rhea were made for each other, and had it not been for the COVID-19 pandemic, their film would have been made. And yet, she's one of the biggest keys of his demise. Sushant's relationship with Rhea was the beginning of the end. She turned out to be a total Svengali, and this resulted in his world being flipped upside down. Something we've seen celebrities falling prey to many, many times before. Rhea supposedly took over, restaffing his team, spending his money, and dictating his career path. Even though there were multiple pictures of them in public and on social media, most of the people in Sushant's life either didn't know who Rhea was, had never met her, or the official status of their relationship, and this includes Sushant's father. According to the FIR that KK Singh filed against Rhea, Sushant's mental health problems didn't even surface until their relationship began, and it's interesting to note that he didn't even go back on or start taking medications until November 2019, which was around the time that Rhea began living with him. From what little the family has said about Rhea and vice versa, it's obvious that there was animosity between them, especially with Rhea claiming she had been molested by Sushant's sister Priyanka. At the time, Sushant believed Rhea and sent his sister this scathing message, But in his final days, he realized that this had been one of Rhea's many manipulations. The family tried to get Sushant away from her, but to no avail. The media had a witch hunt for Rhea, but I do not agree with the paparazzi treatment, as is seen in this video of her trying to get into the police station for questioning. It's a little difficult to watch, so be advised. I have my opinions on Rhea, but this is absolutely not okay, and it's especially unsafe considering that at the time, India had the highest record of coronavirus cases in the world. Without a doubt, this impacted her family, especially since Shoak was arrested in the drug angle right before Rhea. No matter what side you're on, neither of them are unscathed. Everything that followed is inevitable, and life will never be the same. All of this makes her anger justifiable.
I does not understand what this could be doing to me. It's really sad that I have no privacy left. Me and my entire family are going through scrutiny every day. Anything I say will get misconstrued. The Mumbai police never went soft on me. They were in fact extremely harsh. That was one harsh investigation. ED was another. FBI is going to be another harsh investigation. And each investigation takes away a part of my mental health. The person who was most questioned in all of these investigations.
But the ones that are against her are pushed to the sidelines, and so many are in defense of her. I divide this into three parts: the people that spoke out in Rhea's defense, the people that spoke out for Sushant's justice, and everybody else in between that was totally silent. I rack my brain on what the reasoning could be behind these celebrities supporting Rhea versus being silent on Sushant. I can't help but wonder if this is all because of some feminist angle, and also out of fear that if they do speak on what happened to Sushant, they could become the next target. These aren't light crimes she's been accused of either. Money laundering, abatement of suicide, theft, criminal conspiracy, wrongful confinement. Those are some pretty heavy charges. She's not out of the woods just yet, considering that in March of this year, her and her brother Shoak were named by the NCB in a 12,000-page long charge list. In the usual norm of murder cases, the significant other is almost always the immediate prime suspect or person of interest. Not only has this been reflected in pop culture, but in real life as well. A lot of people presume that Rhea's role in all this is nothing more than a scapegoat to a bigger entity, whether it's Bollywood or the Mafia or the right-wing Shiv Sena. People think that she isn't a major culprit. I will reiterate what I said in my second video as I continue to stand by this opinion, that I do not think Rhea physically killed Sushant. However, I do think that she had some kind of involvement and knows more than she's letting on, but is keeping her mouth shut either because she's scared of the actual mastermind behind Sushant's death, or it's all for personal gain. Rhea was with Sushant for over a year. They planned on getting married. He named the virtual reality company they started with her brother Shoak after her, but somehow she's being portrayed as a villain. It's not her association with Sushant that made her a villain, it's her actions that followed. How she's conducted herself towards the media, lying, withholding evidence from the police, slamming Sushant's family every chance she gets, that's definitely villainous. Her interviews and statements do not reflect highly of somebody with a strong sense of integrity and morality. She comes across as hollow and disconnected and narcissistic.
Is there no humanity? I looked after his son with the kind of allegations and the accusations treating me worse than a terrorist. Allegations are being put on me. I am being accused of everything under the sun. I deny all these allegations. They are absolutely baseless. I deny all these allegations. They are completely baseless. They are worse than rumors.
For all the PR that she had behind her, especially that stupid patriarchy shirt that ended up being a result of a menstrual cycle awareness campaign, Rhea was not taught to demonstrate the humility she claims to have. When it comes to true crime, these interviews can make or break somebody's character and show their true colors.
Why did they let him come back if they think I was isolating him? No, I don't think I'm going to be arrested. I have not done anything worthy of being arrested. Respect his love for me, if not mine for him. All we did was love a boy.
There's clearly a stark contrast in that of Rhea's interviews and Siddharth Patani's versus the other people in Sushant's life prior to these two. I think out of everybody involved, Rhea and Siddharth in particular have had nothing but ulterior motives and only cared about their own names and self-interest. If recent reports are to be believed, the FIR that Rhea filed against Sushant's sisters is hindering the CBI investigation, which further proves my point that she is only out for herself. Now, it's as if nothing ever happened. Rhea has become a paparazzi darling. I wouldn't be surprised if she is pulling a Kim Kardashian, calling them on herself for clout. She's already proven that she's trying to remain relevant, like when she jumped on the Free Britney train. We already have enough problematic figures trying to erase their wrongdoings by backing Free Britney. Shouldn't you be justice for Sushant? After over a year of delays, Chihire was finally released on August 27th to mixed reviews and a tepid box office performance. It's also been subjected to voting brigade with people intentionally leaving bad reviews on Google and IMDb. The film's director, Rumi Jaffrey, who has been on Ria's side almost this entire time, thinks that because she was voted the most desirable woman of 2020, proves that the public has swayed their opinion, thinking of her from witch to wanted. That's not what it means. What it means is that people were Googling her because of everything that happened. The latest rumor is that she's been scouted by 3 international agencies to start a career in Hollywood, and my question to that is, why? I have a whole list of reasons why she would not be a good return on investment in Hollywood, but that is a video for another day. Unfortunately, this is not the last that will be spoken of Rhea or Siddharth Patani. I think that Rhea is well aware that at one point the tightrope could very easily snap for her. If karma does come true, there will be poetic justice down the road, and the SSRians think so as well. In my update video, I had mentioned the SSRians, which is the name of Sushant's fan group. I will say they are very loyal, but go about things in a really unconventional manner. The perspective that I've formed is based off of my personal experience and not meant to be the generalized opinion. I don't interact too much with the SSRians, and I think it's because our views aren't always aligned on the same page. We all have a common goal: justice for Sushant. However, at times I have noticed that the posts get overzealous and a little delusional. While it's incredible that this case has reached millions of people around the world, it does border on toxic fan culture at times. For some, it's all about following the hype of a celebrity death, similar to how when John Lennon was murdered, he became everybody's favorite Beatle, dethroning Paul McCartney, who had been the unanimous favorite since the band's inception. On the other hand, this also contributes to the phenomenon of how celebrities' popularity and depth of their work can astronomically increase in value and appreciation following their death, and it's even surpassed the fields of art and entertainment. They're entitled to their posts, but they do get a little disconcerting. I've seen posts about how people can't wait for Sushant to come back and be their boyfriend, or that he's coming back soon, which does contribute to the theory I mentioned in part 3 about how some people think Sushant could still be alive. But I think the post I had the biggest problem with is this one about coronavirus vaccinations. I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt because they probably had good intentions trying to raise vaccine awareness, but this is highly inappropriate and gives way to being unintentional propaganda, not to mention spreading misinformation, as Sushant wasn't even alive when the vaccine was created or even had coronavirus. He tested negative for corona in his autopsy. In a way, the fans and the media have both fueled the fire with multiple conspiracy theories. Since so little was revealed, it's as if these conspiracy theories were concocted to fill in the blanks. The media definitely used Sushant's death to boost their ratings because even after all the coverage resulted in the CBI probe, they've gone pretty much radio silent, which makes their efforts fickle. As much as I hate to admit this, absolute hysteria was created via the masses.
A celebration among the suicide theorists, many of whom are using a selective, unofficial leak to claim that Sushant committed suicide by hanging. Republic TV in the last 113 days has accessed hundreds of testimonies, and we know Sushant was murdered. Republic TV in the next few minutes and hours and all day today will expose the U-turn of the man heading the AIMS panel.
Their methods of sensationalism went completely against the World Health Organization's guidelines for reporting on suicides, especially with detailing how it was done, and such admittance can be harmful. People that are watching this are vulnerable out there, and they can be prone to mimicking these acts. We saw it here in the United States when Robin Williams committed suicide, and there were even a couple after Sushant died. There's been more to this than just the mysterious death. These were anxiety-ridden times with the COVID-19 pandemic and upcoming election. Some people thought that this coverage was used to detract from the downfalls that India has and continues to face, but it gave the opportunity for people to exploit and capitalize this for their own personal agendas, not just at the expense of Sushant, but the entire situation. One notable example that I mentioned in the first video was Kangana Ranaut, who earlier this year mentioned Sushant's death again when discussing Karthik Aaryan's falling out with Dharma Productions, which is run by Karan Johar. Her words and actions just didn't come across as sincere, and the general consensus is that she used this to validate her claims of the Bollywood underworld. However, I do feel that if somebody with an international following, like Priyanka Chopra, who knew Sushant, or even Kendall Jenner, who appeared alongside Sushant for Vogue India, would have used their platforms to spread awareness of what happened, then I think the CBI investigation would have been approved a hell of a lot sooner. One of the most obvious connections that led many to think that this was a murder over suicide was that of Sushant's death and his former manager Disha Salian, who mysteriously died nearly a week before him, supposedly by suicide when she jumped off the 14th floor of her apartment in Malad West. The story has been reiterated that she was having a party with some friends and her fiancé. after consuming too much alcohol, Disha proceeded to lock herself in her room and at some point fell to her death from the balcony. While Disha's parents do think that some kind of accident resulted in their daughter's death, they do not believe that there is a connection to Sushant's death or that she was murdered. Disha's death caused Sushant a great deal of distress. His house staff said that he had stopped eating and talking. He was also agonizing over the fact that his name was being dragged in the headlines by association in Disha since he was a client, to the point that he even consulted a lawyer and begged his brother-in-law to take him out of Mumbai. He continuously told his sister, "They will not leave me now. They'll come behind me. They'll chase me. These people will trap me. These people are very powerful." Sushant never clarified to whom he was referring, and it's something that still remains a mystery even now. This wasn't the only thing bothering Sushant. He was paranoid that Rhea was going to expose his mental health struggles to the world. She lived with him for over a year, administered his medications, spoke to his doctors, and even wanted to hospitalize him in January of 2020. There was certainly a lot at stake to lose. One of his final phone calls before he died was to Rhea, who supposedly blocked his number when she left on June 8th, the day Disha died. This all sounds super suspicious, but it gets even worse when it comes to the actual investigation. At the time of recording this video, the CBI is still investigating all angles and no possibility has been ruled out, with Sushant's family still having immense hope that the CBI will solve the case. It took over 2 months for the CBI investigation to be approved and to recreate the crime scene. In all that time, Sushant's apartment hadn't been sealed up, which would leave plenty of opportunity for the culprit or culprits to go back and cover their tracks. Ames is still sticking to their report that Sushant's death was a death by hanging and suicide, despite Dr. Gupta's statements that this was 200% a murder.
He made some startling revelations, questioned suicide, questioned Mumbai police, questioned Cooper, questioned the medical board. His position then is contradictory to what he says now, or at least selectively to some friendly news channels that want to peddle the suicide theory.
This isn't some Joe Schmo off the street. This is a trained professional with almost 30 years of experience. Dr. Gupta admitted that he thought Sushant was murdered twice to Sushant's family lawyer.
Commented that it is death, it is by strangulation, and it cannot be said to be death by hanging.
And to the reporter that recorded the conversation.
So we have not kept intact. We are not. In destruction, हम नहीं बोलेंगे. It has been contaminated and not suitable for further examination with scientific. Was contaminated and not forensically suitable for further. And forensically suitable for. Not suitable for further. So will be sent shortly. तो उनका हम लोग वेट कर रहे हैं, हम लोग वेट करके उसको एनालाइज करेंगे, उसको स्टडी करेंगे, वो कॉल्स देखेंगे, टाइम सीरीज डेथ क्यों नहीं किया इन लोगों ने। टाइम सीरीज डेथ का क्राइटेरिया है कि जब वो लास्ट उसको डेड डिक्लेयर तो उन लोगों ने फ्लैट पे ही कर दिया, वो डिक्लेयर डेड, क्योंकि डेड मोर्ची नहीं लाया है, कोई इमरजेंसी में तो लेके गए नहीं, तो हाउ दे प्रिज्यूम दैट ही डेड एंड दैट रिक्वायर एन इमरजेंसी रिवाइवल मेडिकल सिचुएशन। तो वो तो क्लियर हो गया ना, उस समय तो डेथ था ही, तो उस तरह से ऑटोप्सी करने का समय तो फिक्स है।
And then he turns around and changes his story. I'm sorry, but that is super sketchy and totally looks like a cover-up. This was handled so badly. It's been a total house of cards. Everything up to this point has been nothing but smoke rings and red herrings. I think the biggest one was the whole drug nexus angle and spending way too much time on that video. But the news certainly had a field day when the top stars of Bollywood were being summoned for interrogation. By the way, when I say drugs, I mean mostly marijuana. I'm sure my audience in California is probably scratching their heads over that, but these are the rules in another country and we must respect that. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I am a huge fan of Deepika Padukone. She is one of my favorite Bollywood actresses and a huge role model for me. She's done an outstanding job in bringing about mental health awareness. So it was a tough pill to swallow that she was on this list to be summoned, but it seemed like nothing really happened to her or any of the Bollywood stars that were questioned in all this. The whole investigation just seemed to really go nowhere, and I can't help but feel that it was a diversion tactic. There have been 35 arrests made in the drug angle, including that of Rhea and Shoik, but it hasn't gone beyond that. Apparently, the NCB did identify whom they claim is the prime suspect. A man named Sahil Shah that used to live in the same complex as Sushant and was supplying drugs to 2 of the men previously arrested in this case but are out on bail. Sahil has been MIA prior to this information being released to the public. Sushant's investigation has amounted to hundreds upon hundreds of hours of questioning, an almost 500-person team, and a cost of nearly Rs 6 crores, which totals to $822,000 USD. The last major update was Siddharth Patani's arrest by the NCB for drug procurement on May 26th of this year, and as recently as a few weeks ago, he has been denied bail and remains in judicial custody. Between All of that, the fact that the autopsy was done at night, the contaminated viscera samples, the lack of CCTV footage, and the open crime scene, a logical outcome seems pretty unlikely at this point. I'm not sure if all of these investigative teams dropped the ball of their own volition or they were forced to do so in a massive cover-up, which isn't entirely implausible, but it looks really, really bad either way. The Scooby-Doo gang could have done a better job solving this case.
Jeepers, jinkies, zoinks, ruh-roh.
If I had to assemble a fictitious dream team, I would have the best of the best. Law and Order, which is an entire entity, so just Law and Order. Deputy U.S. Marshal Raylan Givens from Justified. I'd call in Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson from BBC Sherlock. And lastly, Ella Lopez and Lucifer Morningstar from Lucifer. One of these. And we would find out the truth, but that's not the real world. In the real world, as I've stated a few times before, I don't think the truth of what happened to Sushant will ever be unveiled. This case is a little over a year old, so there's still time for hope, but it's just an awful feeling that I get. By far, this has been one of the most frustrating true crime cases that I've ever heard. At times, it's felt like an episode of Black Mirror, which leads me to one question that has not been answered this entire time. Where was Fudge? Where was the dog? Seriously, dogs are incredibly astute, especially if something is happening to their owner, and I can't imagine that Fudge wouldn't retaliate if he saw Sushant being attacked. I know that what I'm about to say is going to upset a lot of people, but I have to be honest with how I feel. The death of Sushant Singh Rajput has only one of two viable outcomes. Either this was a person suffering with extreme mental health issues that chose to end his own life, or he was sabotaged by an abusive relationship and targeted by a higher corporation. And this is where things are black and white. In conclusion, if I had to give a final answer, I do think that Sushant was murdered, but I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out he committed suicide. I want to close this epilogue with a bit of how I have evolved throughout this creative journey. As I stated in my first video, I knew that I wanted to venture into true crime at some point, but I decided to touch on stories that weren't being covered over and over again. Sushant's story is one that needed to be told, but with it came a few risks, amongst them being a newer YouTuber and covering a case from another country, even though India is a big part of my demographic. A few people have accused me of doing this for clout or to obtain followers, which is absolutely not true. I did this because I am truly invested in Sushant's case, and if I wanted those things, I'd go and make 50 videos on Trisha Paytas and Onision. I've also had people telling me to focus on cases from and for my own country, such as George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. To that I say, there is no limit for the injustices you want to fight, and the stats are indicative of where my fight belongs. Sushant's case definitely had a lasting effect on me, which from what I've heard happens with true crime cases. Stephanie Harlow said that the Madeleine McCann case stuck with her and that at the time she thought about Madeleine every day. This goes beyond YouTubers. It's the generalized concept of true crime, and it's how a lot of people are feeling now with the Gabby Petito case. For a lot of people, it's Shanann Watts and her children. For my mother, it's Gabriel Fernandez, and for me, it's Sushant Singh Rajput. I do think about Sushant every day, and whenever he pops into my head, I can't even begin to fathom how something like this could have happened to such a genuine, unique soul in an industry that I have come to love so much over the past few years, an industry that has more or less become a launch pad for my online career, but I guess it goes to show that all that glitters isn't gold. While this is the end of the series, it isn't the end of me discussing the case. I'm sure that I'll mention it in other YouTube videos, but my dream is to one day make a full-fledged documentary on Sushant that falls under the participatory, reflexive, and expository modes of Bill Nichols' 6 Modes documentary, and it's actually part of my 5-year plan. I just recently got into Lord of the Rings, and in the first film, Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf is having a conversation with Frodo, and I felt what was said really connected to this case. He tells Frodo that many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. I know that nobody but the man upstairs himself should be playing God, but there is no denying that there are some horrible people in the world that did deserve Sushant's fate. But he was not one of them. Sushant absolutely deserved to live. He was such a force to be reckoned with and had so much to offer. He was on his way to doing great things, greater than he had already accomplished. It's not only unfortunate that he left this world too soon, but how his character was assassinated by the pandemonium that followed. I wish I had been a bigger fan of Sushant when he was alive, but now I fully appreciate him for who he was and what he could have been. I would even go as far as to say he's kind of like a Bollywood James Dean, an actor that tragically passed away at a young young age, but had a profound effect culturally and internationally. This past year has really put things into perspective for me. I remember working on the notes for the series last July while sitting by my maternal grandmother's deathbed, and now I'm wrapping up the series 2.5 months after my paternal grandfather passed away. It really is a circle of life, and I think I'm not the only one to admit that these past almost 2 years have not been the easiest. As cliched and oversaid as this sounds, the message with all of this is appreciation. Appreciate yourself, appreciate the beauty of differences, appreciate your loved ones, but most importantly, appreciate life, because if we apparently only get one life to live, we should make the rest of our lives the best of our lives. I want to leave you all with a quote from Sushant, but before I do that, the only thing I have left to say is that is going to be the end of this series. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next wave, all Martians. Bye.